Hello, this is Zsófilter, the feminist podcast of Partizán, the leading independent media channel in Hungary. My name is Zsófi Balog, and my guest today is Isabella Cêpa, and we are recording this conversation in Morocco. Isabella is a graphic designer, a feminist activist, and influencer from Brazil, who had been advocating on the issues of sexual and domestic violence since 2016. With a large social media following, Isabella is also the first in the world to be granted asylum due to political persecution for misgendering someone, which in her case means calling a trans-identified politician a man. She was reportedly facing up to 25 years in prison in Brazil after this politician reported her to the police in 2021. Our international listeners, welcome to Partizán's podcast channel. You can find out more about us on our social media platforms, and if you can, please support our work through the links in the description. Hi, Isabella. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. I love the introduction. And thank you for coming to this place that is very special to me. In fact, I got you a gift.
Seriously?
And yes. And I think we need to get in the mood.
All right. I love it.
Because you're going to have to. Thank you. Duh. I wouldn't do it alone.
Wow. Okay, let me open this at the end.
Okay,
we'll
and then
keep the people guessing what you're bribing me with for the interview.
No. It's just because I would like to begin saying that I chose this outfit and I bought one that is the same for you, because here, as much as people think many things about Muslim countries, the kafta is something that men and women wear the same. What changes if you're going to wear a hijab, a niqab, or a burqa is your sex. So I just wanted to state that and make it clear since we are here. Thank you for coming to this place that is so special to me. And then we can talk about anything you want.
Can't wait to get to know more about your story. And thank you so much for this kind gesture. And I think it's a very special circumstance that we are meeting. Your story came on my radar last year when Redux first reported on it. By the way, redux.com is a very important site that reports on a lot of issues regarding this topic as you're involved with. Also, your story was not all over the news, even though it's quite an insane story. So let's get into it. Just a brief timeline for the viewers to understand what was happening. 2020 November. A person named Erika Hilton, previously Felipe Santos Silva, was elected to São Paulo's municipal government. He is the representative of the Socialism and Liberty Party in Brazil, and you post a video about this. Take it from there. What was in your video that became your crime, because afterwards you were facing jail time?
At this point, so this was the first time this person ran as a woman. The prior elections, he ran as a man. I had no idea who this person was at the time. This was for the city chamber of São Paulo. I was living in Florianópolis, which is a city 2 states away. But I am from São Paulo, so of course I was following the news. And I saw this headline. The most voted woman in São Paulo is a transvestite. And I didn't even check, like, who is this person? I didn't see a picture. I didn't know their name, you know? It was just... Then I was commenting on my Instagram stories about, like, my general feeling regarding the elections. And one of the sentences I said was, São Paulo, I'm disappointed. The most voted woman is a man. That's it. I didn't even know who the person was.
Most voted means he got the most votes?
Yes.
Among all the running politicians in São Paulo?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, so these elections happened in the entire country. So every city, Brazil has more than 2,000 something cities. So every city elected their city chamber representatives. Yes, representatives. And in the end, I found out that this person was the most voted in the country for this position, counting all the cities of the country. But at the point I posted this on my Instagram, I had no idea who this person was, and it was irrelevant to me. I didn't care. So then the director of Brazil's Elle magazine, she posted on her Twitter like a screen recording of these stories, basically inviting people to harass me and to physically abuse me in different ways.
Wait, sorry.
Yeah.
Hang on. The magazine Elle
Yes.
in Brazil,
Yeah.
and this editor is calling for people to harass you.
Yes.
Citing your video and reposting your video that you made on Instagram.
On Twitter. She
On
posted
Twitter, okay.
Yeah, my video was on Instagram, so she recorded the screen and posted on her Twitter. So she followed with other tweets saying that I made a false report of rape against a black man. So then it was just this wave of people who were not from my circle, right? Because my circle is radical feminists. The radical feminists of Brazil knew who I was. Outside of this circle, very few people knew who I was. So then she was introducing me to this other social bubble as someone who is a criminal, who is deserving of violence, and who falsely reported a black man for rape. And I had no idea what she was talking about. Still to this day, I don't understand. And then people believed that. So I was not only transphobic, I was racist and a feminist fraud, because I was using my position as a feminist to falsely report this man she was talking about. So then it became huge. There were like more than 70,000 retweets or something like that. It became huge. And then the politician himself, he started immediately saying that he was suing me. But this didn't happen until a year later. So during this first year, from the moment I posted this to the moment I was actually not even being sued, but the first police report, I already went through an entire year of this person lying, saying that he was suing me and that I would have to pay, I don't know how to say, damages. And he would donate the money that I would pay. So like campaigning around a prosecution that didn't even exist for an entire year. A year later, he made the first police report.
Right. So
That's the beginning.
Wow, already intense. So
Yeah.
he reports you to the police, but time passes and you know about this, but you don't know what's actually going on with the investigation or your case. You just know that it happened, but then no news. And then 2024, during the summer, I believe, is when you want to leave for Spain for just a holiday for a couple of days. And then they call you over in Brazil. You're still in Brazil in the airport, ready to leave to Spain. And then what happens there?
Yeah. So before that, there were two important events. So the first police report was made, if I'm not mistaken, in November 2021. And I was called to go to the police station in January 2022. So I did go. I spoke to the officers and I was like, okay, what is my crime? No one could tell me. But how do you say, they indicted? Yeah, me anyways. So even like the chief of the station or just the guy who was typing what I was saying, nobody could tell me what exactly I said that was wrong, because that man is a man. But anyways, so this was the final report of the police. They sent it to the public prosecutor. This public prosecutor, the one that took my case, he's famous for chasing influencers, and like, you know, he wants these mediatic cases in which he makes famous people pay ridiculous amounts of money for doing stupid things. So what he did is he combed through my entire Twitter page and found other 4 incurrencies on this crime, which were retweets. So I was being prosecuted then when he, we say that he offers the report to the judge, and then if the judge says yes, then I am being prosecuted. So not only for this one time that I said, this man is a man. But also for these other 4 times that I retweeted things that I wasn't even the author of. And I had no idea. So that's why they started saying 25 years. But this only happened in June. So along with like all of these things happening, in 2021, I was raped by my ex-partner, right? And then I broke up with him and he started stalking me. So then I got a restraining order. 5 days later, he broke the restraining order and he was arrested. So during this whole time, I was already dealing with a lot of post-traumatic stress disorder from other things. And when it was June 2022, it was his first hearing a year later. So he got his conviction on the 14th of June of 2022. And then 3 days later, it was on the biggest and most important newspaper in Brazil, which is Folha de São Paulo. It would be the equivalent, it would be the Brazilian New York Times, just so people can understand. The headline saying that I could spend 25 years in prison. And I was like, how? 25 years. There is a provision in our law that if someone commits, let's say, the same crime many, many times, you don't just sum the time. You do like 1.3 times 1.3 or something like that. One third.
So 5 times 1.3 for this one original crime that they found like similar instances another 4 times?
It would be like, let's say if my sentence would be 3 years, it would be 3 times 1.3.
Okay.
Just that. But what they did on this newspaper was to take the maximum time that I could get, which would already be unreal, and make it times 5. So this would be 25. And then I told the journalist, because in Brazil they have the obligation to talk to anyone who's involved in the news. So she told me that, like, do you have any comment on this? And I was like, I don't even know what you're talking about because I wasn't informed. And this was under seal. This is very important. This entire prosecution was under seal because as a survivor of domestic violence, I had the right to have any prosecution involving my name under seal.
So you don't even know about it?
So I didn't even know about it. But they shared the secret and protected information with the media. And those were agents of the state because one is a politician, the other one is a public prosecutor, the other one is the judge. Those are the people who had access to this material before me. So then I went to this newspaper and the journalist spoke to me and I had no comment on it, but I told her, this is wrong. Like in law terms, this is wrong. 25 is not the right number. And she said, I know, but we're going to publish this way anyways.
And this is what got around later on as well. This is what I was reading also, which is, of course, very sensational, but at the same time, very scary for you to read at the time, like what the hell is happening. So this article comes out. I'm sure by this time you're already infamous around, well, pretty much the social media and everywhere, that in your circles and outside, as you said. So... but you're still trying to live your life as best as you can, I'm sure. And of course, we can go into how it affected your life and other parts of it, of course, with your ex-boyfriend and all his case. But the last time you are able to set foot in Brazil or be in Brazil is the time I was skipping ahead for 2024, when you are informed in the airport that you should not return to Brazil, which is insane to hear when you just want to leave for a holiday. So what happens then?
So I gave this background because now it's going to make sense what happened at the airport.
Right.
So in 2022, there was all of this harassment and persecution happening from this politician, from my ex-boyfriend. I had to move back to São Paulo. My life was a mess. I closed my company. So then I decided to live the digital nomadic lifestyle. And I literally sold everything I had on my Instagram. I opened like live streamings and I started selling my stuff. And I sold everything in like 4 days, bought a backpack, and a one-way ticket to Malaysia. And this was 2023. So then I started, traveling, living my life. I needed to be away from all of this. I needed to find my peace again and to rethink my life. And then during this period, I was just like traveling, and I entered Brazil one time, but through another airport because I was visiting friends in the south, and they were following me. So they were checking with the federal police which airports I was using when I was entering and leaving the country. That's how they came up with the idea to flag my passport in every airport in the country. Again, Brazil is the 5th biggest country in the world. So then, when I was going to Spain, I didn't leave from São Paolo. I left from Salvador, which is a city super far away from where I was actually at. And then I was like just having my normal trip. And then when I go through the security and then I'm at the immigration counter, the guy asked me, "Do you know about any prosecution against you?" And I was like, besides something that was on the news 2 years ago and I never heard from it again? No. And he was like, "Yeah, but your passport here is blocked. We're going to need to take you to the secret area." So there I was like, okay, but because it was like a connection flight, I was already late for the flight. And then they took me like to this separate area of the airport, and they started reading the files of the prosecution, but it was already so long. At this point, I don't know, almost 1,000 pages before I even knew about the prosecution. At this point, my Twitter account was already taken down without my knowledge and against Brazilian law and constitution. And I had no idea why. So, and still, I didn't know why I was being prosecuted. And that day was when I found out that I was being prosecuted for 4 retweets, because until then, I thought it was because of at least 5 things I said myself.
Oh, so you didn't even know it was retweets until then? You just knew 5 somethings that you said.
5 somethings. Okay. Yeah. And of course, like when this was released on the media, they didn't share the details of the prosecution. They just said like, okay, this criminal is going to be prosecuted. She's going to spend a long time in jail for things that she said because she doesn't believe this man is a woman. But they didn't say anything about the content of the other posts, which were, for example, one of them, it was me saying, retweeting, "Women, today is our last day to vote. If we believe transgender women should go to females' prisons or not." A neutral comment, right? So anyways, then I go to this secret space in the airport, like the airport shows. It was exactly like that. And then there were 8 officers around me, all of them reading the files and not understanding what was the crime.
So they see a flagged passport, they call you in, okay, we have to investigate, and they have access to your files right there. This is insane.
Like they're reading in front of me, and I am telling them, I don't know what you're reading. I have never had access to this. And they, between them discussing, not understanding what is the crime, why I was being prosecuted like to this level, like to move the federal police in the entire country. So then when he finally understood, he was like, okay, I need to make you sign this paper because there was a camera at the counter when I stopped you there. Otherwise, I would just let you go. But if I can give you some advice, this is political persecution. Like you check the boxes for applying for asylum. And we don't want to see you again to arrest you. So if you have the opportunity, try to stay as far away from Brazil as you can. And actually, I was going to Spain to spend just 4 days. And that's how I ended up coming to Morocco for the first time. I got a 15-euro flight. And I ended up in Saouira, and I fell in love with the country and decided to stay. But it was, I had to decide my entire future on a flight from Salvador to Madrid, basically.
And you have not been able to go back to Brazil ever since.
Yeah.
Almost 2 years have passed, right?
Yes.
And I'm really curious what has happened to you since then, whatever you want to share. But just going back to this case, so this happens at the airport, and then you have to figure out what to do and where to stay. I'm sure it was super stressful. Meanwhile, when do you decide to apply for this refugee status? How does that even go? Who helps you? Does anyone help you? I know of one women's rights organization, Matria, who was following your case and helping you according to reports. But what do you even do? How do you even start? And where do you turn to? And how do you end up getting this refugee status? And I mean, just comment on the absurdity of it. I mean, you know, people think refugees are, fleeing war, and you are fleeing retweets, basically, or the accusation of transphobia because of your retweets.
Yeah, that's actually a very funny story. And I think it was like destiny or something. When I think about like this whole story and I go back in like this specific dates and times, I'm like, this is either a joke, like I'm probably Truman, and this is my show. Because I went to Madrid on that flight to spend these 4 days with my friend. We rented a scooter. And then we had an accident. We had a crash. Nothing big, nothing major, but the scooter was pretty damaged. So then we had to call the toll. And the guy, the driver, he spoke Spanish, of course. He was from Venezuela. And I went in the front seat with him because my friend didn't speak Spanish. So then we started like listening to music and we started to get like intimate, reggaeton, da-da-da-da-da. And then he starts telling me his story. And then turns out that guy used the asylum system to bring his entire family to Spain because he was in danger back in his country. I had never thought about it before, Like I knew I was being persecuted, but I had no idea what to do. My thought was like, I have to, just travel and enjoy my life. And at some point, it's going to be unfashionable to persecute people for stating such basic facts. And I just have to wait and live my life in the meantime, But then this guy was a refugee, and so then I started asking questions like, how do you do that? How long does it take? I had no information about it. So then I leave Madrid, I come to Morocco, and I meet a very special friend. And he's like, you can stay with me for as long as you need until you figure things out. And then that's how I ended up coming and staying in Morocco. And then during 1 year, I would stay here for a bit, go to Spain, go to Portugal, spend some time, still like thinking if it was even fair to take a measure this extreme because of something so stupid, having no response or any new information regarding my case, and doing research. So during this 1 year, and this is how I work, if I am curious about something, I'm going to get a degree on that thing, So of course, during this whole time, I also studied law, and specifically criminal law and criminology, because I wanted to know how to protect myself in the system. So I started studying the refugee system and the Geneva Convention and all the countries and then the legislations of the countries that are signatories of the convention. So I was circling some options until I got to the decision of the country, which is my country of asylum, which is not Morocco. It's an European country.
Yeah, when I read about your case, I just saw that somebody from Brazil is persecuted for this crime, and they are somewhere in Europe, having just been granted the refugee status. And that's when my attention was like alert, like, okay, I have to know who this is, where she is, hopefully, and what's gonna happen. Can I meet her at one point? So yeah. That was, I think, a year ago or so. And I can't believe we're finally talking, but go on, sorry. So
it was hard. So the process, in case someone is interested or going through the same situation, it is free, but I knew that it was the first case in history in the world. There was no precedent. It would be very hard. I knew that. So when I was in Portugal, I found this lawyer who formerly worked for the federal police of my asylum country, and he was in charge of sending unapproved refugees back to their countries. So he knew exactly how the procedures work, what kind of evidence we need to present. And he's so good-hearted that he no longer works for the police now. Now he has his own office and he helps people through the process of getting the status. So I found this guy and I sent him an email, and first he thinks I'm a scammer. He doesn't believe my story is real. But then we schedule a call.
Honestly, fair. Like if somebody calls you with this story, like, are you joking? Are you wasting my time right now, lady?
It's what he thought.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I mean, it is fair also because, and it's hard to think of that, but it never happened. It's such a big world with so many people. Like, it's hard for me to believe that I am the only one, you know? It's weird. So I understand, but he's a sweetheart. He became a friend, very dear friend, and it's gonna be with me for my life. But so then I found him, and he instructed me on everything I needed to do. So, for example, because I was in Portugal, I could not fly from Portugal to the country. I had to get out of the European Union and enter the European Union through the country I was interested in getting asylum from. So then what I did was coming from Portugal to here and flying from here to the country. And that's how he arranged things. By the time I got there, he had everything prepared. He had already all the files of my case. Everything was ready. And he guided me through the process. But all of the interviews and responding to questions, organizing information, it was me. So then it was my birthday, because my birthday is in June. A friend came from Germany to meet me for my birthday and also help me with the refugee process because I was very tense. And then we did that. The first thing that happens is that you need to give up your passport. And then basically you're not a person anymore. You have no ID whatsoever. You get just like a card of asylum request or something. And during this time, you cannot rent a place for you to live. You cannot work. You cannot open a bank account. You know, you're like in a limbo, basically. So I just traveled around the country. I stayed in a hostel for a long time. You know, just like doing nothing, basically, just waiting. And then, but the process in this country is very quick. It depends. It's from country to country. It changes. So it was very quick. But during the interviews, I had to have 2 extra interviews, like more than the normal procedure, because the unprecedency of the case. So they needed to make sure they understood everything because they were about to create a precedent. And it's very rare at this point in history for someone to create a precedent in the Geneva Convention, because you assume all the worst things that had to happen already did. So it was very delicate, and they also wouldn't believe at first.
Right.
And then, so I brought all the documents. We translated the files of the case, and they were like, okay, but so hate speech is not even a crime in Brazil, okay? So I had to make them understand that not only I was being prosecuted for something stupid, I was also being prosecuted for a crime that does not exist in our law.
Right. What I know about this so far is that in 2019, Brazil's Supreme Federal Court rules that discrimination against the LGBTQ community constituted a penal offense, but there is no hate speech or transphobia law per se, but they put it under this existing race-based protections, and they call it a sort of social racism. And this is what you're accused of, basically.
Yes, but they cannot do that. We're not the United States.
Right.
Only the Congress and the Senate, and then with the sanction of the president, can create laws and therefore new crimes. So it's completely unconstitutional.
So this court ruling is not even legislated. It's something that's pretty much made up, and this is the basis that they are accusing you based off of.
Yes.
Okay, so still insane.
Yeah.
Getting more and more insane. But meanwhile, all the while you are waiting to receive your refugee status and you're doing all these proceedings, your case is going forward, supposedly, in Brazil. When do you learn about any developments while you're away from there? What is happening with your case there?
Yeah. So what happened to the case was that it started in the jurisdiction of the state of São Paulo. In the state of São Paulo, both prosecutor and judge wanted my conviction. That's why they took down my Twitter account for no reason. But then I think the other part, the offended part, got a bit too confident. And they decided to move my case to the federal jurisdiction. What happened in the federal jurisdiction is that both prosecutor and judge said, there's no crime here. But this happened precisely when I was going through the interview processes with the asylum request. So on this day when I learned that, okay, maybe now, because it was just going downhill, and then we had this up. I was like, okay, so I told them, the officers, because of course we need to be completely honest with them. So I told the officer, today I had this news that maybe something will change. I will keep you posted, but as far as I know, from the judge that was there before and the prosecutor, I'm convicted. Like there's not even a discussion to be had. And then after this, it only went up. So first, the federal prosecutor said, there's no crime here and there's no crime period, because this is not a crime. Even if like whatever she said would be understood as what people call transphobia. Transphobia is not a crime. The judge said, okay, I understand the Supreme Court decided that transphobia is a crime, but what she did was not transphobia. So then they appealed to the prosecutor general, and the prosecutor general said, not transphobia here. And then they appealed to the Supreme Court, which was the ones who created this mess to begin with. And then I believe they were expecting that to have a very different outcome in the Supreme Court. And everybody was just so tense because it would be all or nothing. I would either become the first Brazilian to be convicted for saying such thing, or I would be the one that would prevent anyone else to go through the same thing. So it was all or nothing. And then he said no transphobia here.
So when is this?
This
2025?
was in September 2025, yeah.
Right.
So I was already, when this happened, I had my asylum granted already. I am pretty sure that this also influenced a bit on the decisions, because they knew the world was watching. It was not just the Brazilian state abusing one citizen that cannot defend herself. At this point, I had not only my refugee status granted by all the norms of the EUAA and the Geneva Convention, but I also had allies in the United States, in the European Parliament, in the UN. So it was not a joke anymore. And also, during this whole time, before I got the refugee status, the Brazilian media was not interested at all in publishing about the case. No one. There was one or two, if I'm not mistaken. Redux was following from the very beginning. It was only, they had the information that I was granted the refugee status for weeks. It was only when Redux posted and J.K. Rowling retweeted, immediately the Brazilian media.
Oh.
And then it became the biggest news in the country.
Okay.
But it's still... what happened in the end was that everybody learned about the case because I got the refugee status, and then everybody started to follow the case because they were interested in the outcome. When the outcome came and the headlines were, "It is not a crime to call Erika Hilton a man," the country exploded because it changed everything. So then it changed a lot of things in terms of how people behave, and I can see that. Because back in 2021, when it was on the newspaper that I could spend 25 years in prison for saying something so stupid, I saw all the feminist collectives like closing their pages, stopping whatever they were doing, like their movements, their organization, like they just disappeared. And then when I saw that now in 2025 and now in 2026 is like the end of an era, it's over. But in 2025, when people were like following the case, they were getting like this hope again that they could speak again, that they could think and that they could talk about what they think. It was like it was dormant for these years because my case was used as like the scapegoat, you know, like if you do this, you're going to end up like her. But now, if you do this, you're going to end up like me. What do I have? International protection. I'm innocent. My rights were granted by the Supreme Court. It's a pretty good place to be. It's not what they expected it would be. So I saw like this social movement of people from the right, from the left, from up and down. Everybody getting the courage to talk about this issue. And now in 2026, things are happening and people are remembering the case.
So what are the things that are happening now? What are the latest news? Is your case closed even? Because in a previous interview, I heard that it was just archived, which doesn't mean it was closed, but it can be reopened. So can you help me understand what your case's status is at the moment?
This one is closed. So it was archived, but then because they appealed to the Supreme Court, and this is the last resort, then it was just closed, and that was it. They tried to appeal. What I do know is that the prosecutor who supported the thesis that this crime does not exist, she was somehow punished in the federal prosecutor's office. She's a very brave woman. I absolutely love her. I didn't know her, of course, before that. But I really admire her because she knew what was coming to her and still she did what she thought was right. And she was punished for this. This case was closed. And there was a second case that I didn't know, again, that I had no information about it. So then now, in March, Erika Hilton, this man who prosecuted me for not calling him a woman, he was elected the president of the Women's Rights Commission in Brazil.
So I heard March 11, elected as president of the Women's Rights Committee in Brazil. It's a standing committee in the Chamber of Deputies. Its members are responsible for evaluating legislation and public policies related to violence against women and issues that impact women's health. He was also, in December 2025, one of Women of the Year for Marie Claire magazine. And I also heard that the same day he was elected to this women's commission or committee position, he filed a criminal complaint against a TV presenter for questioning his appointment to the commission. And the crime of the presenter was, I quote this because it's ridiculous. The presenter on TV said, "I didn't think it was very fair that Erika Hilton was named for the commission. Why give the role to a trans woman? I have nothing against trans people, but for a woman to be a woman, she has to have a uterus." Hilton is demanding 10 million Brazilian reals.
Yes, it's our currency, reais.
yeah, sorry, of the pronunciation.
That would be around 2 million euros.
2 million euros. Okay. And Erika added, I am and always be a woman. This presenter is and always be a rat. So this is the kind of person we're dealing with. And if I'm correct, he also sued other people and is continuously threatening to sue other people during all these years. So great choice for the Women's Committee, of course.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, I digress, but I just
sorry,
want to,
but
yeah, I mean the absolute ridiculousness and insanity and how offensive it is to women is just unreal. But and of course, I come from a country of 10 million in a tiny European part of the world. I don't know much about Brazil, but reading your case, I mean, the same kind of things are happening with feminists, with trans activism, with the silencing, with the self-censoring, with the women's rights organizations not standing up and just self-censoring all the time, the smear campaigns, the cancellations, and all that jazz. So your case is closed, and you say you were going to say something regarding this March election of Erika Hilton.
Yeah, I love my country so much, but sometimes it's just like, Brazil, help me here. So yeah, this happened. And it wasn't like there was like a big vote. It was just like, I think, something around 20 votes, and 9 people voted blank. And somehow he got 11 votes. But nobody really wanted him there, of course. So when this happened, you see, I'm following Brazilian news from very far away in a different time zone. So also it's different for me. I just know that I opened my Twitter app and all I could see was my face on my feed. Because when this happened, and I felt it was very healing when this happened, people were remembering the case. So what everyone was saying is, this man who persecuted a women's rights activist to the point that she had to be granted international protection is the president of the Women's Rights Commission. It makes no sense. So then also because people were remembering the case and then it all came back, I saw people saying things that before my case was closed and this was the final decision, they wouldn't. So I understand that now they are very, very angry with this outcome, not just because they wanted to punish me personally, but because the case became the example of what people are allowed to say. And they are very aware of this now because...
They, you mean Erika Hilton and his supporters, or...?
Well, no, my second they, my last they was to Brazilian society.
Okay.
Is very aware.
Right.
That now they can, because this case became so public and it reached so many different audiences. Because usually, algorithms, bubbles, right and left, nobody talks to anyone. But it reached everybody. So then people felt free to speak and talk. And then I saw many different forms of organizations of women, even like women from the right, saying the most basic things about women's health. So what happened was, so this TV presenter, he's like, I don't know how to explain it. He's an OG from like Brazilian 90s and 2000s television, in the sense of like my grandfather would watch his show at night.
So everybody knows him?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, he's a classic. He's a dinosaur, but he's a classic, But also, I wouldn't say it's like a very progressive mindset of the show. The first action that one of the parties in Brazil took was to make a formal request for the mandate of Erika Hilton to be, I don't know how to say, subtracted, ended.
Revoked?
Revoked.
Okay.
Because his first action as the president of the Women's Rights Committee was to post on Twitter calling women imbeciles and, how do we say, the dogs.
Wow.
Yeah. So because our politicians have an ethics manual that they have to follow. If they don't follow, they have their mandates revoked. Now, so the first thing one of the parties did was to formally request this, and the witnesses for this case is me and this TV presenter. And I'm like,
wow,
how did this even happen? It's so insane, you know? But also, there was another case. So before this happened, I think it was like weeks before this happened, there was the final decision on another case. Because remember, I was prosecuted for retweets.
Yeah.
When I got these papers and I got to Madrid in my hotel, I started posting on my stories. I was like, guys, remember that thing that it's been 2 years that they're saying that I'm going to spend 25 years in jail. So turns out these are for retweets. I am being prosecuted, but the authors of the tweets are not being prosecuted. So what they did when I said this in 2024 was starting prosecuting, first chasing, literally hunting the authors of the retweets, and then prosecuting them. They didn't manage to find two. The other two, one was investigated and nothing else happened, and the other one was prosecuted. The police was trying to find her. She was in a clinic because she had attempted suicide for other reasons, things, you know, of her life. And the police was trying to find her there while she was there. Yeah. So it was a very delicate situation for her. She doesn't have the same resources as I do. Sometimes I'm even like somehow thankful that this happened to me and not to other women with less resources, because at least I could leave the country. I can speak another language, you know, I can travel alone. I'm brave enough to, you know, pack a backpack and go outside, because for her, it was a very, very different experience. She's very attached to her family. She doesn't speak other languages. She was still studying. She didn't want to abandon university. So she had to stay and deal with whatever could happen. So then Matria, this women's organization, they introduced me to ADF International. By the time I got really close to ADF, my case was almost like solved. It was going like towards the end.
What is ADF, just so we understand?
Alliance Defending Freedom. It's an organization, an international organization. They support this groundbreaking cases around the world.
Okay.
So they support Sal Grover in Australia. You know, they have very Nini Borges in the UK, who's also Brazilian. And then I introduced ADF to her. And they decided to help her in Brazil with her defense. And then she started feeling like more confident, I would say, more protected. It changed a lot for her. And then now, weeks before Erika Hilton was elected president, her case, well, let's just say she also won. The prosecutors involved, and it wasn't even prosecutors. The prosecutor and the judge wanted to convict her. What they did was a habeas corpus, and so it went to like a second instance with more experienced and decent judges, and they all, in unanimity, decided that that prosecution shouldn't even exist. And she was dealing with it for years when they came to this conclusion. So it damaged her health, her life. It was awful. But then she won. And the decision of my case was mentioned by the people responsible for her case as an argument, if in this case, right, jurisprudence. So then when this happened with this TV presenter, I even made a joke. I was like, me and Isadora, which is the other girl, we walked so Ratinho, who's the TV presenter, can run. And then so a lot of fake news started appearing on the media regarding this. So like Erika Hilton, the politician, said that the TV network called him to apologize for what the TV presenter said. And the TV network said, no, we didn't do it. And we actually think what he said was pretty fair. So is this big fight, and the entire country got involved. The country stopped because of it. And then now, as I said, there was a second prosecution against me that I had no access to. I thought it was related to Isadora's case, because my name was in Isadora's case, and Erika Hilton was in Isadora's case as an assistant to the prosecution, which is a right only granted to the victims of a crime. Isadora didn't say anything about Erika Hilton. So why was Erika Hilton assistant to the prosecution in her case? The only explanation is that I was somehow involved in the case, but I didn't have access to it. That was our conclusion, but it wasn't. The federal police was trying to reach me since July, I guess, of last year, 2025. And I would tell them, okay, you can talk to me, you can interview me, that's all right. But I want access to the files first. And they wouldn't give me access to the files. I had to try more than 5 times, and ADF had to hire a lawyer for me in Brazil. The lawyer had to request 3 more times, and then we could get access to the files of the prosecution. And turned out that the one who is prosecuting me or suing me for transphobia, he's not suing me. This is not how it works, because when we talk about racism, it's a crime against a community. And this is like of public domain in Brazil, right? So a person can ask the the prosecutor's office to prosecute someone. So they make this request. The person making this request is my rapist's lawyer, my ex. He is friends with the lawyers who represented Erika Hilton in the prosecution against me. And during the prosecution of my rape is still going on. He's on the run now. I know where he is, but he's on the run. And the Brazilian government is doing nothing about it. Only my passport was flagged.
Wow. Retweets are the real crimes, not raping a woman.
Exactly.
Okay.
Plus, he was convicted for violating the restraining order, so he should be doing his time, regardless of the decision about the rape and also severe bodily harm. Because in Brazil, when the psychological damage is too strong, one can be prosecuted for severe bodily harm. So during this period, we have the prosecution of my rape happening and the prosecution against me happening, both under seal. What these lawyers were doing is exchanging personal information, my personal information, between them. My phone number, my address, where I was. Because, of course, if I am the victim here...
And you learn this from the files that you finally get access to.
Yes. Then I can clearly see when I change my phone number here, my new number appears here. They were so desperate that they left, traces. And we knew they were working together from the very beginning. Now, this is like, since 2022, we knew they were working together. But I had no idea my rapist lawyer, not only he's defending my rapist, he also wants to prosecute me for transphobia against Erika Hilton, who is a third person, who has nothing to do with this case. In 2023, I reported this to the Minister of Women in Brazil. We had an online meeting, and I told her, this persecution is affecting my very intimate and personal life, my sexual violence case that has nothing to do with the fact that I am transphobic or not. You're going to decide this in the future. She did nothing about it. So then what is happening now is that, we found out about this case, and then we arranged my interview with the police. I had to get an authorization for this because I'm not allowed to have any contact with Brazilian authorities as a refugee. And then I was interviewed by the police, and he was like, did you say this, and that? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, okay, no crime.
This is about you saying things online?
Yeah, random things. So like every time I referred to a trans woman as a man, he pointed like, oh, look, she's being transphobic again. It was just a bunch of silly things. But what he wanted was, he was using all this because since 2022, I was posting on my Instagram. I know for a fact that Erika Hilton's lawyers are working together with my rapist lawyer, and they want something. So I was posting about it and naming him. What he wanted was to point me as someone who was committing crimes online, so the justice would take down my Instagram page and I wouldn't talk about it anymore. Again, it went wrong because now, so the police said there's nothing here. And now the federal prosecutor's office said the same thing. There's no reason to prosecute this woman. And they mentioned Isadora's case's decision on this decision. So my first decision inspired the decision of her case, and now this case got also some bits of her decision. So they targeted us and made like a circle around us. And now we have like this very robust and strong jurisprudence that was created with these three cases. So I won again. They can still appeal, but it's not going to work. And now, yes, I mean, I am allowed to talk about the fact that my rapist lawyer is trying to get me prosecuted again for transphobia. But the thing is, the media knows about it. The Brazilian media knows about it for years. They don't want to publish anything about it. They will only do when Redux posts about it, when Matt Gaetz is talking about it, all
He's
the international
American commentator from the right, so viewers know who's...
I mean, we are two very, very different people who believe in very different things. But when he called me the Rosa Parks of reality, I kind of, I was like, yeah, at least we can agree on that. So it's very... I see that they tried so hard, they went so far that they ended up, hurting themselves. It's kind of like we didn't even have to move. They destroyed their own plan, as it looks. And now, because when I won my first case, people were like, now you can come back home. But I knew there was this second case. And people think it's like, you won, come back. I have no idea if they're going to persecute me for the rest of my life. I have no idea. This person hates me. At some point in my asylum country, the apartment I have there has 4 doors because I was thinking about how powerful are the people who are paying these politicians in Brazil to go this far just in order to defend an ideology. Why wouldn't they kill me? Give me one good reason. So I started thinking about these things. Didn't make any friends in the asylum country because I don't speak to anyone. And then it was very sweet. The authorities of the asylum country understood that this was being very damaging for my mental health. So they gave me my passport back so I could have the freedom to visit my friends in other countries, including here, outside of the European Union.
Oh, so this is not something that you're supposed to have, but they granted you your passport? Wow.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean...
I talk too much because
it's
complex, but sorry.
No. Thank you for laying this out because reading about it was already a lot. I mean, just the details of your cases and all these proceedings, and of course your life as it is. I mean, it's just it's a modern day witch hunt is what it is.
Yeah.
And we are talking about one man with power who decided he is a woman and wants to be recognized as a woman and does not let go, and uses his power for years to target one feminist and then, of course, more women if he can, for stating the obvious, for stating facts. And I think the reason I really wanted to talk to you is because in Hungary, again, in the past 5 years, I've been covering gender ideology and women's rights to their spaces and all that. And of course, all this LGBTQ ultra progressive ideology is spread across the civil sector and the NGOs. There are very good women's rights organizations, but they avoid the topic. They will not make a statement on anything related to this because they're afraid to get involved. You know the drill. And so there are a couple of people, including me, who are like outspoken, and that's it. And of course, I get the same kind of, you're transphobic, you're like a Nazi, or blah, blah, blah. We have right-wing government, so I'm helping the right-wingers to stay in power and all these beautiful things.
Yeah.
Anyway, what I really wanted to, why I really wanted to talk to you is because people don't believe this shit. They will still not believe it even when they watch this, if they watch this. But I know that people who pay attention, feminists, women who don't dare to speak, who are silent. By the way, I'm very mad at the feminists who don't dare to speak, but that's just in brackets, because I just don't understand why adult people, especially in countries where we are not prosecuted for these things, because in your country, you can be afraid. But still, I think if enough people, adults in the room said, this is bullshit. Sorry, we're not going to call you a woman if we don't want to. That should be enough. Anyway, and I think your case is just so. But there are, as you mentioned, other cases in the world. Sal Grover in Australia, but there are cases in Canada, United States, UK. Just so many insane stories. If anybody wants to, by the way, they can check them out in Redux. You really, if you start looking, it's everywhere in the world. And your case, I think, is maybe more illustrative because it's not from the Anglosphere, what we usually hear news from regarding this topic. And you're just a person. You're just a feminist. You're just a woman who doesn't want to shut up. And there are some men who hate that so very much. We have some time left, but I really want to know how you are and also how can people help you?
Well, about what you were saying before, I think if I can send a message to Hungary, I think in Brazil people took a long time to believe. Again, we are many, right? You are 10 million, we are 220 million. It's hard to spread news. So this whole thing started many years ago, and we were saying exactly what is happening now. So one of the first things that I said was, these men are going to start to declare themselves women in order to be protected by our domestic violence law. They're going to start being convicted for crimes such as rape, and anywhere in the world, anyone knows what happens to rapists in prisons. And the best solution for their own survival, they're going to declare themselves women to go to females' prisons. This is logical. And this is actually happening now, but it took some time. So that's also one of the reasons why I didn't go after trying to get access to the files of my case. I knew it was a matter of time, that it was just like a fashion, a trend, and it would pass. I could have done it. I could have requested the access. But I was like, look, I'm going to let them try to find me for as long as I can. Because by the time, like in 5 years, which was exactly what happened, things are going to have changed. Now in Brazil, recently, we had a media report about some of the prisoners of one specific female prison. They wrote letters reporting all of the abuses that they're suffering from the men identified as women. They're locked up with them. And this is getting to different layers of society. It's not just between, the progressive, left, intellectualized, yada, yada. No, it's like, the old lady selling coconut water at the beach, she's reading this and she knows, she's informed. And that's why the latest researches that we had, for example, with this election of Erika Hilton for the Women's Rights Committee, 84% of the Brazilian population is against it. So how can we justify that only or less than 14% of the population believes? How can this ideology be so powerful when no one believes in it? How much money is involved? When we talk about Brazil, for example, it's very easy to understand why this happened in Brazil, because our health system is 100% free for anyone, even tourists. So people are being harmonized, getting their surgeries, everything through our public health system. Who's interested? Who is selling these products to our government, right? So it's very easy to understand why Brazil was a big client for this ideology. And specifically, this government that hopefully is going to end this year, Lula, and people always talk to me like, but now Brazil is like, great, Lula is the president, it's not Bolsonaro anymore. Do you prefer, would you rather die burned or, I don't know, drowning?
Yeah.
It's hard, but I knew that Lula would be worse than Bolsonaro for this, because Bolsonaro, as horrible as he is, at least he knows what a woman is. So I think Brazil can be used as a great example of what happens when you literally sell your country and your institutions to these philanthropies, right? Because our federal prosecutor's office was also sold to this. Our Ministry of Women now only talks about trans women. They are dedicated to trans women, not lesbians, not women for real, no, just trans women. All the public policies, there's an attempt right now happening in the country to criminalize misogyny, as misogyny being the violence against anyone who identifies as a woman. So this, the size of this damage is something that we could predict back then, but nobody had the courage to lose their jobs or to be persecuted or to just be hated in their group of friends for saying this. And now there's not fashionable anymore to cancel me or J.K. Rowling. People are talking more. So I guess if anyone is still wondering if they should, I would recommend that they don't wait until things are like in Brazil now, because now we're going to have to fight for legislation for things that are a bit too late for us to discuss now. And how I have been in pretty bad shape. I am awesome now here. I love it. But being in exile was the hardest thing. I can't even, it's hard to explain to anyone what it is to be in a country where you know no one, you cannot trust anyone, you cannot even, this basic conversation like, oh, where are you from? Brazil. Oh, and what are you doing here? This stupid conversation that I would have every day at some cafe. I could not be honest. So that's why I decided also to come here and just be free of it for a while. It was very, very difficult to adapt. And then at the end of last year, I had an episode of something that was a mystery for many doctors. I was admitted in 4 different hospitals in 2 different countries, and nobody knew what I had. My head would spin like crazy, as if I was inside a barrel in the ocean, 24/7, even when I was sleeping. They thought it was something on my ear, and then I went to the neurologist, and I had a head scan and everything. It was anxiety. I ended up in the psychiatric hospital. I couldn't stand up alone anymore, so then a friend had to come, or another friend from Germany had to come to stay with me, to help me take showers, eat, because I could not even sit because I was spinning all the time. And this is the level of anxiety that I reached, a level that no doctor could diagnose. And then this year, already healed from this. So it took me more or less 2 months to be able to walk again and do my things. This anxiety transferred to the back because it is my nervous system, right? So I spent more than a month with, like these belts in order to be able to stand up again. Incredible pain. Even when I'm sleeping, I cannot move at night. Like my health was completely compromised because of all this. People think it's like, she's living in Europe, she's having the time of her life, she can travel, she's doing her stuff. But it's not like that. I want to see my friends. I wanted to, on a weekend, just go to my best friends and watch Shrek, and share silence with the people I love, and I cannot do that. The only place where I can do this is here, because here I have friends. What also was very compromised was, of course, my career, because I had my company and then I had to close my company and then I became a freelancer and I was traveling everywhere. But defending yourself in a prosecution this big is a full-time job. A part of the fact that I cannot send my CV to anywhere because you can just Google my name and no company, even if they agree with me, they don't want to be related to my name. It was very, very hard for me to start working again. I spent years working for small clients who would pay me peanuts, treat me poorly, very poorly. So it was humiliating, professionally speaking. And then this year, I finally got a friend who works for the government of an European country to hire me for developing technology projects, which was exactly what I wanted to do. And also, because I could not send my CV to any company, I participated on a design contest. And I won because they didn't know who I was. So then when I won the contest, my work was so good that they decided to hire me. And I was like, okay, they didn't ask any questions. They didn't ask for my CV or anything at all. It was just based on the quality of my work. So now I regained everything, like my professional life is back. My health is improving. I am finally back in Morocco with my friends here, enjoying this amazing place that I love. So now it's the best moment, but there's always this feeling I won every case that I was supposed to lose, and my friends are winning too, and what I support and believe in is also winning in my country and being the example for other countries. So it's like now, it's paradise. But it is still difficult to know if it is ever gonna be safe for me to go back or for any woman to speak in Brazil. We have these decisions, yes, but most people are scared of the process because they cannot afford lawyers. I had 14 lawyers in this entire thing. So they cannot afford the lawyers. They don't have the means to escape the situation if they need to. Their careers and their jobs are not as flexible as mine. So they know they're not going to be punished with the sentence, but they are afraid of not surviving the process. So this is something we still need to overcome. And I received a lot of help from people from all over the world. And it was so beautiful because I lived in Morocco 2 times, in Portugal 1 time, in Spain 1 time, and in my asylum country, let's say 1 time. Each time I moved, I had to go to IKEA and buy the same things. So I already had the things that I bought with the money that people donated in my asylum country, I already had here in Morocco. But of course I cannot bring, my pens and carpets with me on a Ryanair flight. So this help granted me some peace during this period in which I couldn't work, I couldn't be a person, I couldn't live anywhere, and I had to just wait. So this international help was so important. Also helped me pay for my lawyer because the success fee was high and we had success very fast. So I didn't even have the time to, save the money. I had to pay all at once. It was so beautiful to see people from everywhere just trying to contribute the way they could. And it's even better to say now that I don't need any help. Finally. It's crazy. I don't need... The help I need is I need people in my country to not vote for Lula this time. This is all I ask. But from the international community, the only help I can ask is for other people. I don't want anyone to go through what I went through. It's horrible. So it's like if they're silent or if they know someone is in this situation. So, for example, I have a friend who was also canceled in Brazil. She was not prosecuted, nothing like that, but she was canceled because she's an artist and her work is about abortion. And she couldn't find a job for many, many years. So I found her a job. This was the first thing. When I got my job, the first thing I wanted to do was to get her a job. And I think people who have their lives, organized and they're not like under this scrutiny or being targeted directly by these movements, they don't understand how difficult it is to survive because it affects all of your relationships, your friendships, your romantic relationships. You cannot talk about anything else. Maybe you have to move every month or every 2 months. You never know what's going to happen with your life. The people around you are suffering. So I think it would be very interesting to share this perspective, or if someone would be listening to us and thinking, what can I do? Just offer whatever you can to the person you know who is going through this. So let's say it's been hard. In Brazil, we had some cases of feminists who didn't manage to survive anymore because they didn't have clients anymore in their works, and they committed suicide. So this is very serious, and my friend got really close to it. I got really close to it. And I think people outside of this who are not living this like in their skin, they don't understand how serious it is. So if I could ask for anything at this point is if there's anyone else going through anything similar to what I went through, if you ever lose your job or, it's for people to offer the means for the people who are speaking to survive. Because it is pointless, right? You're not speaking, someone else is, but the one who's gonna die because of it is the one who's speaking. So you don't want to speak? Fine, but help the ones who are speaking survive. I think that should serve like to any country until we overcome all this madness. I don't think it's gonna last longer. I give it 4 years max.
I really hope you're right. Just a last note, we are, when we are recording this, we are coming up for an election in Hungary. It's next weekend. And we have a right-wing government, as I mentioned. The prime minister has been in power for 16 years, so it's very, very tense. This is the first time we have a chance to change the government. And the incoming guy is not a leftist at all, but he's promising everything. He's not progressive per se. He's not involved with any of this topic. He avoids the topic altogether. So we have no idea if, and he has at this moment, based on the polls, he has a good chance of winning. Maybe he will even have a majority in the parliament, his party. And so the reason I'm talking about all of this is because since 2020, when I started talking about this publicly on the channel on Partizán, I've been always told, even the election before, it was 4 years ago, I was always told it's not the time to talk about this. This is not the time. Feminists and progressives have to pull together. There's no room for inner dialogues and criticisms. We have to pull together because we have a right-winger in power who is misogynist, who hates gays, who blah, blah, blah. And I never agreed, and I never thought I thought it was a stupid thing to say. I still think that, and I'm just really curious because you were also mentioning how under Bolsonaro or Lula how things are, and of course, I don't want a right-wing government. Of course, I want a government that's for women. But I think liberals in my country are just sleeping in this illusion that all we have to do is change the right-wing government to a different one. All we have to do is just get rid of Orbán and get rid of this government that we have now, and everything will be flowers and beautiful unicorns, and we just have to do this. But I really want to see what these people who have been locked into this binary thinking of it's either the right-wingers and the fascists or the gender-bending world and the fluidity and the everything and the rainbow. And I was always saying there is actually a possibility to think in the gray area, and in a third option, which is feminism, which is protecting women's rights at the same time, not, wanting them to go to the kitchen, which is not hard to do. We've been doing this for decades, feminists in Hungary too, and in Brazil and elsewhere in the world. So I'm really curious if things change in my country or other countries, or this trend takes another turn, like in the UK or elsewhere or in Brazil. What will these people, how will they cope with their cowardice and the lies they have told? And I just also want women to be left alone and feminists to be left alone and not get called names and be prosecuted for common sense. Anything else you want to say at the end of the conversation? Anything we didn't cover? Anything that you want to let people know?
No, I spoke so much, right? But good luck to you guys. I totally understand what you're talking about. And it's like I'm on the end of this cycle. So I can see this now. The people who were the first ones to cancel me, post things, say the most horrific things about me, they're silent now. And I think this is what we can expect in all the other countries. It's just a matter of when and how it's going to happen in each country. But it is going to happen because there is no way at some point everyone is going to be okay with understanding that whoever declares themselves a woman is a woman. Like it cannot happen. It's not feasible. So I guess I wish you the best in this process and patience also. Because we get desperate. We want, it really feels like it's the end of the world, but be patient, be strategic, and watch it happening, because it will happen. So I'm very happy for Hungary now, because I can already see the outcome of it. Hopefully I can go there to enjoy it.
Please, anytime.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to thank you. It was really an honor for me to receive you here specifically, because I cannot host you in my country. But let's say the closest experience is to host you in this place that received me so well, and that is where I feel home. Nowadays, when I say I'm going home, it means that I'm going to Morocco. So I'm really glad that you could come and we can share this conversation here outside of the mess on the other side. It's really nice. Thank you so much for coming and for doing this interview.
Thank you for sharing your story and for the conversation.
My pleasure.
All right. Thank you.
Do you want to see your gift?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, the idea was that we would match.
So,
but we can go for a coffee now.
You are actually not going to believe when I say, when I was coming here with my friend, I said, I want one thing from Morocco, and it's a kaftan. Because this has been my... anyway. And it's true. And it's a beautiful color. Wow.
It is.
It's so gorgeous.
So I'm a designer. Of course, the color is beautiful.
Yes. Wow. This is amazing.
And this is one of the nice ones. I
can see.
I went to a shop in the Medina that I like.
The fabric, the color, the work here.
Yes.
Absolutely beautiful.
I wanted you to have this special memory, and also this experience of wearing something that is the exact same for men and women. If we wear our kaftans now and we go for a coffee, we're going to walk here by the beach and we're going to see that dude wearing exactly the same. I like this experience of observing how all the gender construction is different in different cultures. The only thing that doesn't change is the oppression of the humans, of the female sex.
Yes.
Because the whole dressing thing is a Western thing, but the sexism is everywhere. So I like this experience of dressing like this here and just observing. I love observing how sexism develops in a different culture in very different ways, but it's all about the same thing, which is the female body, and that sex exists and matters.
And I just last note on that, because I think Hungarians especially are not very, very knowledgeable about either the Islamic countries or the Middle East. I spent some years in the Middle East, so it's very familiar here, even though it's a different, of course, country and we're far away from Egypt. But at the same time, I recognize a lot of the same materials and designs and cultural things, and even the buildings are similar. So it's like it's very trippy. And I know even when I lived there as a feminist, I was always told, well, why do you go there then, And it's just so hard for people to understand that if you have to leave your culture in order to be somewhere that is not, the reference points are different, the problems are different, the culture, the politics, the religion, everything. But at the same time, it's just the same things are happening on a different scale. Yeah. And patriarchy is everywhere. Women are struggling everywhere. It's just a different flavor of it. But at the same time, I always make sure to add, do not judge this culture because you have all these ideas about how people are there and how women are there. And you just have to look and go there and experience it. You don't have to like it, but you can't judge from the West and just say, oh, I know all about this and I know how this is.
Nothing.
This is gorgeous.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.